Now, 16 different Australian Prime Ministers have served under Queen Elizabeth II. When she assumed the throne in 1952, Sir Robert Menzies was just beginning his second term. During a visit to Australia 11 years later, Prime Minister Menzies delivered a famous speech in which he spoke of his deep admiration for Her Majesty.
All I ask you to remember in this country of yours is that every man, woman and child who even sees you with a passing glimpse as you go by will remember it. Remember it with joy. Remember it in the words of the old 17th century poet who wrote those famous words, "I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die."
After Menzies, another 15 Prime Ministers served Queen Elizabeth II, including our nation's 30th Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. He joins me now from the Shire alongside his wife, Jenny. Thank you both for your time on a sad day, but a day when we reflect. First to you, Scott Morrison, on a wonderful legacy of Her Majesty. How do you think that will be remembered?
Oh, the greatest of all time, I think, Kieran, because if you consider the span of history over which she governed, there has been no more extraordinary time in world history that she has held such a position and been so loved in so many parts of the world, whether they were those that she ruled over or not. The affection for her was truly global. So today is a mixture of great sorrow, but one of also great thanksgiving, I think, and gratitude for a life incredibly well lived and well served. And I think that it will be her forever legacy.
Jenny, I know you got to meet Her Majesty on a number of occasions alongside your husband. What was she like to meet in person? Can you give our viewers a sense of that?
Yeah, she was the most delightful person. She was so warm and engaging. She was kind. She put you at ease, and she was funny. So she had a great wit about her, and just like an amazing role model. She was just an amazing person.
You must have been nervous ahead of the first meeting.
Yes, we were very nervous. I think Scott maybe more so than I. Yeah, no, it was pretty nerve-wracking to meet her, like someone you'd heard about, seen on your televisions and watched and admired for many, many years, and it was an incredible thing to be actually doing.
The curtsy and the bow right.
Yes.
That was very important. The protocol of these visits, as every Prime Minister and others who have met the Queen will know, they really give you the drill before you go in, and because you hold her in such respect and honour, you very much want to get it right. And I've never been more nervous before any meeting in my life, but never more thrilled to have had the opportunity to have one such as that.
Was it
indeed, and I know that you've spoken about Her Majesty's strong but quiet faith. How do you reflect on that in terms of her 7 decades, extraordinary 7 decades of service?
Yeah.
Well, we forget, perhaps, those who don't know, that she was also the head of the Church of England, the Supreme Governor, I think it's referred to. And but I think when you look throughout the span of her life and the many things that she said and the quietness in which I think she expressed that deep faith she had, it was clearly a sustaining force in her life and brought her great sustenance and encouragement because she had a fair share of challenges. There's no doubt about that. Both as a sovereign and as a parent and a grandparent and more. So this was I think gave clearly her a stability and a solid rock for her own life. And that enabled her to be a rock, as Liz Truss, Prime Minister Truss has just said. I referred to her today as the rock of the Commonwealth. And I'm glad that role of hers, not just as sovereign of the United Kingdom and Australia, but of the Commonwealth more broadly, is being acknowledged today. When her and I spoke, she would often speak of the Pacific, particularly places like Papua New Guinea and Fiji and the Solomons and many other countries, Tonga, and with whom she had a strong affection as well, and the King of Tonga. So she had a great passion for this big blue continent down here in the Pacific and our very big wide brown land, which she greatly admired, and particularly, as I've said many times today, rural and regional Australia. She had a great affinity with those who worked on the land in this country. She understood, I think, its challenges, and she saw the challenges that our farmers faced, whether it was drought or floods or the many other perils that they encountered. She was always very interested in that.
Jenny Morrison, can you give us a sense that those of us who haven't, the vast bulk of us have never had an audience with the monarch, what is it like? And how did Her Majesty try and make you feel at ease?
Well, like I said, she wanted to engage you. So from the minute you're welcomed into her drawing room and sitting time, we get to sit and just take in what she wants to say. But she's trying to put you at ease, and she's chatting with you. She finds an interest that you might have, or we with her, and you just follow on with that conversation. But at all times, I think most of the royals, when you meet them, they do want to put you at ease. They've met people day in, day out, and they do. It's an easier conversation if you're the person you're chatting with is put at ease. So we felt very at ease, even though we were nervous. But her aim was to make us feel comfortable in that space, and she was just she was lovely. She was really lovely.
And it doesn't really matter
Scott Morrison,
if it was Prime Minister or Prime Minister's wife or someone just that she would meet. She would do the same thing. And that would, I have no doubt, draw enormous energy from her. It must have been tremendously exhausting over such a long period of time, but she always seemed so full of energy and so keen and enthusiastic to embrace people and look into their lives and make sure they were seen and heard. I think that was a particular gift she had.
Yeah.
Can you reflect a bit more, Scott Morrison, on the particular affection, 16 visits she had to Australia? Do you think there was a particular affection she held for our country?
I do. I genuinely do, and I think that's the perception that other Prime Ministers have observed as well. And you were just playing a few minutes ago the great Sir Robert Menzies' speech that he gave, and I think what he said that day still sums it up for so many around the world. And she came here many times, particularly soon after she became Her Majesty. And I can only imagine the great experiences she had here as a much younger person. And then over time, she developed this great relationship with Australia. In our conversations, she was always quite admiring of the resilience and strength of Australians, with the hardships faced, but the stoic ability to get on with it and get things done and achieve and to build and to grow. I think this greatly impressed her, and she found a great enjoyment, I think, in seeing that part of the Commonwealth always being prepared to step up and to put their best foot forward and give it a go. She was tremendously proud of our armed services, I should say, and the Defence Forces, and what they were able to achieve, and showed tremendous respect to them, and was obviously always had a keen interest in how they were going, and not just the servicemen and women, but their families as well. That was something in her own life, in her own family, she would be conscious of that, and so I think at our Fence Forces today, there would be a great deal of sadness and sorrow, but one of great honour and respect and gratitude for her service.
I'd love to get both of your reflections on this point, because it goes to the personal story, doesn't it? The fact that she is a mother and a grandmother, that her family is grieving, and that she personally would have had a tough 18 months since the loss of her husband.
That would have been so devastating for her. The company of her husband over such a long period of time, and supporting her all through her life of commitments, and what she had to do every single day and face every single day. And her family clearly love her, and they'd be absolutely devastated. And I really do feel for all of their family. It's very hard losing a parent, let alone the Queen of England. So.
And so in that spare of thought for King Charles III, I mean, when we heard him speak at the Jubilee celebrations, and I think we referred to her as mummy, and that it showed an affection in the relationship which was quite touching. And I do really feel for King Charles at the moment. Here he is stepping into this great moment of history in his own life and in the world's history, but he's dealing with the grieving process of his mummy, and that must be very hard for him. So I think as a country we should be sparing a thought and prayer for King Charles III and the whole family, Prince William. This is a great loss to their family, an earthquaking loss, I think, to them, and we're all with you. We're all with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's a huge act to follow. I mean, that's for sure. The longest-serving monarch in British history, and he's had a long time to wait, Scott Morrison, hasn't he?
Well, he has, and Jenny and I have met then Prince Charles, now King Charles, on a number of occasions as well, and I've always found him to be totally engaging. He is passionate about so many things. I was reflecting on one today when we met him at Clarence House, actually, just before we went to Buckingham Palace, and he was joking and laughing and was keeping us quite entertained, I must say. But we had this quite long conversation about seabirds and his sort of level of knowledge about so many of these issues. Sort of reflects that passion. So I'm not saying he's going to become a sort of a king from that point of view and taking on a portfolio or something. That's not the role. He understands that. I think he'll show great honour and respect to the nature of the role. But I think he brings something different, something new, and I think he'll be warmly received, and I certainly hope he is.
And I understand from speaking to Mr. Howard, John Howard, earlier in the day, that he gave you a bit of advice on what to give Her Majesty as a gift on one occasion?
He did.
Yeah, I sought advice from John on many occasions on many things, but I remember this one in particular before we went to Buckingham Palace the first time, and I rang John and I said, "What do you give the Queen?" And he said, "Mate, she loves horses. She loves the horses." And so, so we came up with the idea of the Winks biography. And so we brought it along, and I had it in the little bag there as we met, and we're bowing. I'm holding this bag, and we mentioned it to her as we gave it to her, and she was pretty keen to sort of pull it out, wasn't she? She pulls it out
through the pages
like a schoolgirl. She's flicking through and looking at the photos, and she knew all about Winks.
She did.
She knew all about it, and what I loved about that was, when you were sort of talking about an area of particular passion of hers, she lit up. She just really lit up. And someone else was saying to me today that you looked at her when she'd be at the races and things like that. She couldn't hold back when one of her favourites was doing well, and she would get quite excited. And I think that just showed, just like anybody else, you have your passions. I'll be cheering tomorrow night for my Sharks. She'd be cheering for horses. There's a connection there which was very human. She had a real humanity, I think, to her. What I described today as a regal humility, which is hard to get the balance of that, Kieran. She was always, wasn't she, Jen? When you met with her, she was always the Queen. It's not like she sort of pretended to be, she's not the Queen, we're just sitting down, I'm just someone regular folk. No, you knew she was the Queen, but she was able to transcend that and engage in a very humble way. I suppose that's what 70 years of experience enables you to achieve, but I suspect it was a lot more innate than that.
And she had a good sense of humour.
She
was funny. So she had the smile on the face with the book. She was quite delighted. She was smiling and laughing.
We joked that Winks was so good she could have written an autobiography.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, but just finally, before you go, so when we reflect on the longevity of the reign of Her Majesty, did you at any moment sort of pinch yourself and think, how did you end up here off the back of, if you look back to the first Prime Ministers, Churchill and Menzies, the first Prime Ministers of her reign, and then was that ever a moment where you sort of thought, pinch yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's why it was the single most extraordinary event of my political and public life. Certainly, it was a great honour, and many others, presidents and others, but this was something quite unique because of her just longevity and stature. You were very conscious of the fact that where you were sitting prime ministers past had from countries all around the world, but particularly the greats of Churchill and Menzies and so many others, and indeed Howard. And she had been, sort of taking counsel with them all, reflecting back to them, I am quite sure, her own very private views within the sanctity of that dialogue between a Prime Minister and their sovereign. And I appreciated that. It wasn't just the formal meetings that we had. The second one, which was quite a thrill, unfortunately Jenny wasn't there for that one, when I went to Windsor Castle, a place that she really loved. And this was, just, as the UK was just coming out of that phase of the pandemic in the summer of last year. And so she hadn't had any visitors for a very, very long time to Windsor Castle. President Biden had been there the day before with the First Lady, and they'd had tea. So she was up for a good chat. She had a visitor coming, and we had a good chat. It was about, I can't remember how long it was. It felt, I think it was about 40 minutes. And that was a great thrill.
I get asked though, Kieran, a lot since the end came for us.
Yeah.
Who was the most favourite person you ever met while your husband was in that role? And I, without a doubt, and so many times, even just like 1 month ago, I said it was the Queen. It was the most amazing thing to meet the Queen. She's such a remarkable person, and to have met her with all her wealth of knowledge, her loyalty, her dependability, her just everything about her. She is an incredible person, an amazing person, and will be remembered that way. And I'm just so grateful that I got to meet her. It was a very humbling experience.
Yeah. It was a very special thing to be able to do together too. With the journey, we've been on. That was one thing that I think we can share forever, Kieran, and we're very grateful to have had that opportunity.
Yep, I can only imagine what an extraordinary woman and leader, and as Jenny rightly said, that sense of duty, just phenomenal. Thank you both. I very much appreciate your time and your personal reflections, Jenny and Scott Morrison. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Kieran.
Kieran.
Good to be with you, mate.